Welcome, everyone. Come on into the room. We're going to get started as people join us. And as you join, please put your name and where you're from in the chat so that we can see who is in conversation with us. We're really excited that you came to join Sojourners, the SojoAction team, in our Bridging Divides webinar series. I'm Reverend Moya Harris, Senior Director of Programs here at Sojourners, and we're going to get started shortly and with our guests because I think this is going to be a good conversation. I'm just looking forward to it. And this will be residing on our YouTube channel for replay. And anyone who joins will get a follow-up email with the links and the links for the previous webinars as well. So I'm really excited about this conversation. All right, y'all, come on in the room and put your name and where you're from in the chat. Let's see who we got here. Brenda, where are you calling from? We're live streaming too, so I guess we have to act right, y'all.
We're gonna do the best
Philadelphia.
we can.
Oh, Dr. Naomi, good to see you in the room. Awesome. And Lisa Brown is in Albuquerque, originally from Boston. Albuquerque. Oh, I'm about to go out to Albuquerque. All right, and what Kelso Washington, welcome, welcome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because we only have but so much time, and I'm just really excited. Today, we have two wonderful women, wonderful preachers. We have Dr. Amey Victoria Adkins-Jones, who is Assistant Professor of Theology and Africana Studies at Candler School of Theology at Emory University. I'm just really excited about that because that's the place where Dr. T. Fry Brown is, and I got to I got to be a TA with her, and I'm really excited. And it's just a cool place. But you have a groundbreaking book that we're gonna delve into a little bit that looks at Black Mariology. It's called Immaculate Misconceptions, and I'm really excited about that. And we have Bishop Erika Crawford, who is the 143rd elected and consecrated, I have to put them both, consecrated bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. She was the sixth woman in the history of the AME Church to be elected and consecrated bishop. And historically, Bishop, you were you were the first elected in your class, which is historical. So you were on the first ballot, and you were the first one to get all the votes. And I wish I would have been in the room. That is
Good
awesome.
God.
That's something. So I've been in the room, and I see how the elections and kind of child. Um, and she's educated. She got a doctorate in ministry, and she's got a DMin, of course, all of that. And she's in the 8th district, which covers Louisiana and Mississippi. So I'm excited to be in this conversation because there's something holy about women in ministry coming together to talk about things that are going on in our church, but how we can correct it and make things better so that all can thrive and all can live in joy. That's what I'm excited about. So today we're gonna have three movements in our conversation. We're gonna name the sin of misogynoir. We're gonna unmask the structures that hold up the misogynoir and see how it operates. And then we're gonna talk about gender justice and joy in the church. So those are the three movements we're gonna try to move through. But if things get good, we're just gonna stop and have a good conversation. So beware. So the first move, naming the sin, seeing misogynoir clearly. The word misogynoir was coined by Black feminist scholar Moya Bailey. And I have to say, I don't know any other Moyas in the world. So another Moya, and Moya Bailey is the one that named this term. And it's very specific, and it's particularly the hatred directed at Black women specifically. And it's the place of anti-Blackness and misogyny that intersect. So it shows up in culture, it shows up in politics. We've seen it with 300,000 Black women losing their jobs since February of 2025. We've seen it the way that this administration has been treating Black women in leadership. And sadly, we see it in the Black church. And I said I was excited about having this conversation, but I'm sad. Like we said before, we're sad that we're having to have this conversation. Um, some people might call it personality conflict. Some people might call it relational issues, but really what it is, it's sin. We're missing the mark in the church. And this is where we're going to begin. So our core question, this part of the movement is that what does it mean to name misogynoir as a sin in the Black church? Not a cultural norm, not a generational habit. And what does that naming require of us? What does that require of us and us in general, individually and as a church? And either one of you can start with that question. So I have some specific questions for y'all, but this is a general one for both of you. What does that do to actually, what does it require of us to name it in the church?
Yeah, I think when we are bold enough to call it what it is, right? It's not culture, it's not happenstance, it's not circumstance, it's not default. I think when we are bold enough to call it a sin, a moral failure, a shortcoming, then it is empowering for those who find themselves to be the victim of it. Because we no longer look at it as it's just the women's problem. It's a sin. Just like everything else we address, it gives us the power to preach it. It gives us the power to teach about it. And so I think when we name it as a sin, we are saying you are operating in disobedience and defiance to God's word. And I think that's what moves the conversation forward.
That's good. It's against God's word. Yeah.
And I would definitely say that you can't address what you're not willing to name. So many of the sins of the church and of the world go or continue onward because of silence and the way that silence functions as complicity. And so, if we're going to think about misogynoir as something that's not just racism that Black women experience, and also it's not just the sexism or misogyny that Black women experience, but that Black women who are the heart of the church, who
Mm-hmm.
are the majority of the congregants, who
Mm-hmm.
have constantly been asked to have been holding up a structure that has way too often not held them up in return. We have to ask some very serious questions around the ways that the Black church has also ritualized societal treatment of Black women and has extracted labor, has used Black women, has been a tool of oppression, and our unwillingness to name it means that it continues, means that it continues to move in the shadows, for all of the different reasons that one can supposedly justify these kinds of harms that emerge, that are projected onto and directed at Black women. So I would also say that when we are practicing or find ourselves in a world that is committed to misogynoir, which isn't just, all of these are also systems and structural sins, right? So it's not just, oh, I did something bad to a Black woman, or oh, I did that. But when we are also complicit in structures of oppression, and social sin and societal sin, then we are saying that there are some who do not carry the image of God in the same way as others. We are saying that there are those who are less than in terms of being God's creation, which adds on to, someone who's less than in terms of their call, right? When we want to deny what Black women can or cannot do, these kinds of systems of power. So we have to ask some questions around what we're committed to. And we have to ask some questions around why, if misogynoir, who benefits from it? What are the structures of power and attainment that come from these ideas that Black women are less human than everyone else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing how, like you said, Black women have been the heart of the Black church. Like, what is it that with the Cheryl Kirk Dugan's book, If It Wasn't for the Women, right? That money has lifted up the church school, the Sunday schools, all of the thing, the educating the children. If the men were in the pulpit, if there's no women in the congregation, the church wouldn't have thrived. Then we wouldn't be talking about there was a church. So that's all good. That's good. That's good. So Bishop Crawford,
Mm-hmm.
you have lived on both sides as a woman advocating from outside the Episcopal office and now in the Episcopal role. What did those years before becoming bishop teach you that you could not have learned along the way if you hadn't have done it? What did you learn as in that pastoral ministry as a woman and a patriarch?
Uh, yeah. For me, I was blessed to be surrounded and uplifted by secure men, right?
Mm,
So I never, in my training and in my preparation for ministry, experienced the challenge because my spiritual fathers, my father in ministry, were all secure men who honored and respected and lifted up women. It wasn't until I really started pastoring and then it became, well, which woman do we want on the committee, right?
mm,
Which woman are we going to allow to hold this seat? And then as I was running for the episcopacy, and the
ooh,
question was, well, are we going to take a woman? I'm not asking you to take a woman. I'm asking you to take the best candidate. And I believe it's me. And so the challenge becomes if you are not sure who God has called you to be, and if you are not sure about where God wants you to be, you will find yourself in a rabbit hole of people who are insecure and will try to convince you that because they are insecure, that you are no better than them. That
mm,
because they are insecure, you don't deserve to be in the spaces and the places that you are in. And you will hear the ignorance followed up in the scripture. Women should be silent and women shouldn't lead and women shouldn't do this. But the truth of the matter is, you have to be an insecure man to spend all of your time trying to tell a strong woman where she ought to be. And that's just the isness of it. So, what I have found is that the people who are challenged by the strength of a Black woman, particularly in the church, are people who know they don't belong in the seat that they're in, and they understand that if the woman shows up qualified and called, that she will run circles around him. And that's why they don't want you in the room. Because when you take average and you take exemplary and you put them next to each other, they don't look the same.
mhm. We see that in society. We're seeing that in politics. We're seeing that in the academy. We're seeing it in so many places. And something about it being in the Black church makes it hurt a little different, I think. Um, and then sometimes it's not just the men that are holding up that's doing this. Is there anything you can say about that? And just so people know, we're not here to beat up on this. We're talking about what the sin is. We're going to talk about the structures that uphold it, and then we're going to get to what are some correctives and joy. So I just want to let people know that's not what this
And
is.
I think the thing is that when we call it a sin, we are also saying there's room for confession and repentance, right? And some people won't own it as a sin because they don't want to repent. They don't want to turn. They don't want to change because they are comfortable where they are. And it's not just men. Oftentimes the pushback comes from other women who have been manipulated and convinced that another sister cannot do it. Bishop McKenzie said to me years ago, and I've carried it with me, women have to learn that we can work together and serve together and be sisters and not have to be friends. But the enemy tries to convince us that we all have to be friends, we all have to sing kumbaya, we all have to get along. And if we're not friends, then I can't work with a woman. If we're not friends, then I can't serve under a woman. If we're not friends, then I can't support a woman. And it has nothing to do with friendship. We have to mature to the place where we understand that people who are called and anointed and appointed should be in those positions. And so the pushback we get is when people have been convinced that all women lead the same, all women speak the same, all women do everything the same, and that God does not have God's hand on a woman the same way that God can have God's hand on a man. The church has been undergirded and supported by Black women. And if there were no Black women, there would be no church, period. Black church, white church, any kind of church, because the women have always carried the burden. We have always shouldered the load. And Jesus never questioned the women showing up. It was the disciples and the crowds, but it was never Jesus.
Yeah, that's a whole talking about the women in the Bible. Yeah, that's good stuff because there's so much we could say, and it doesn't help the fact that both of us are AME, so we could talk from the AME perspective, but it's not just an AME thing. So I'm not beating up on my church. It is a Black church thing that we're discussing now. Dr. Adkins-Jones, I'm going to start asking you some questions about your book because says your book opens up with something that's simple and disruptive. Mary is Black. And it makes me think of Henry McNeil Turner said God is a Negro. That's what he wrote years before there was Black theology. But Mary is Black. The Black church has centered Blackness as sacred, yet it has often been the very place where Black women have experienced some of the deepest forms of harm. What does it mean theologically to say that the most honored woman in Christian history shares the condition of the women in the church that are marginalized? And what does that ask of us?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. I've said this before, so I'll say it again. You know, if Jesus is Black, as our Black liberationist tradition claims, then you know my immediate thought was, I mean, surely he got it from his mama. And so to me, saying that Mary is Black, I go into this in the book. It doesn't mean that Mary is just Black. But Mary is definitely Black. And to me, looking at the condition of the mother, looking at Black mothers in society now, looking at the legacy and honestly, the demonizing, the dehumanizing of Black women through enslavement, particularly with respect to, you know, their ability to produce more slaves, reproduction, not being in charge of your own body, sexuality, desires, pregnancy, birth, etc. We keep going back through colonialism and seeing the ways that women's bodies, women identified bodies are policed in certain respects. The way that rape is used as a tool of war, for me, means that we have to ask some different kinds of questions, not just of how we are thinking about Black folks and not just how we're thinking of women as, you know, these general ideas, but specifically the condition of Black women and femmes in our society. To me, turning to Jesus, you know, hallelujah, thank you, God, is great. But, or I should say, and when we think about God and we think about Jesus as being, you know, 100% divine and 100% human, I am very clear that I am not 100% divine. You can check my group chats and they will tell you all of the ways that I too have things to say that I imagine Jesus may or may not. But what happens that we have someone in our tradition who is called, and perhaps more strongly called than any other human being to walk this earth, a woman who was fully human but carries the divine within her. What happens when she is erased as a model? And I say this, you know, this is a more crass, but it is true. You know, in our Catholic and Orthodox traditions, it's, you know, she is made so pristine and so unrelatable, and then through colonization, so often made to be so white that you can't touch her. She's almost made just below like goddess divinity status, you know, hey queen. And then in our Protestant traditions, you know, through these legacies of theological formation, we've been a little too happy to say, oh, you had a baby, thank you, we'll take it from here, good luck, go with God, be in God's peace. We don't need these models of women as being called, as preaching, as being prophetic, only when it serves certain narratives. So for me, turning to Mary, did a lot of things in a sort of broader theological legacy. Turning to Mary means for me, as I do in the work, means turning back to our questions of Eve and how Eve is described, how we've been a little too eager to throw Eve under the bus and not considered the ways historically Eve has been aligned with Black women. Black women as deceivers, Black women as Jezebels, Black women as the problem. And so when we don't actually ask questions about our theological and historical legacies, which we see so much of our history, folks are trying to actively erase our history and change our narratives. There's a reason for that. When we in the church don't ask questions and don't seek God in these matters, we very easily find reasons that supposedly justify acting in ways that harm certain folks. When we don't ask questions of these narratives, then we aren't necessarily, thinking creatures in relationship with God who can hear what God is saying. We are just, beating each other over the head with these different kinds of rules and not paying attention to the gifts and graces in front of us. So doing that work for me, especially in a moment where, I talk about our reproductive moment. And I think a lot about, why is it that Black women are more likely to die giving birth in this country than so many other women, than uneducated women, than folks below the poverty line of all other races, right? Like, we continue to have these kinds of issues. And I think that there's a lot of things to be asked about the ways Black women are demonized, the ways Black mothers have been demonized or always, sort of narrated in crisis, and the relationship that has to Black futures, right? Like, to birthing Black bodies, to having Black families, to thinking about Black culture and life in this broader sensibility. And so that reflects back on the church as well, because not only do we not frequently have many pictures of women hanging in our church halls, too many of us are still very committed to the same pictures of white Jesus in our, church pews and choir lofts and vestibules just as much as so. And so I ask a lot of questions around what does it mean that there is this Black Madonna tradition all over the world. But if we even just look at Europe, right, there's all of these Black women, pilgrims come from miles and miles around. People save up their money, Black Madonna statues, healing folks, speaking to folks spiritually, crying, all these sorts of things, these miraculous sights that have happened historically. What happens that there are all of these sacred figures of the Black Madonna that it doesn't translate to actual Black people? That we can see that these are these mystical, holy, prophetic, signs of God's presence. But somehow actual Black people are not imagined as sacred. And for me, that's a significant point of question and call and claim that Blackness is holy and sacred. And when we're not paying attention to that in any form that it manifests, that we are missing out on what God has to say and has to speak to us.
That is deep, because that whole notion of we got a whole groups of people that look at this icon, but when you come in contact with the Black female body, we're less than. And we're going to shift to these structures because that was a good transition, because and it's even like with the white Jesus in the church. I'm thinking, so I serve at I'm at Metropolitan Amey in DC, the Cathedral of African Methodism. And it's one of the Blackest churches that I've been to. We've got African textiles up in there and everything. But at one point there was white Jesus up in that place. And it was and the congregation fought to keep that white Jesus. It had to be convinced to take down the Jesus that didn't look like them. What does that mean when we don't envision God? Like Henry McNeil Turner, God is a Negro, saying that God identifies with our sufferings, with our joys. And it's like, I hate to lean to the sufferings all the time first. It's like our joys, our beauties, who we are. So we have talked about the structures. I don't want to get stuck with the sin. Let's move to the structure and what we can't dismantle, like you said, things that we don't see or that we don't acknowledge. So beneath this whole notion of we have the church mothers and the structures, the rules of the leader, the unofficial leader of the church is the mothers of the church. But then when a woman is called into ministry, that whole thing shifts. It's like, what do we do with that? What is the undergirding of that? So Bishop Crawford, it's like, as a pastor and as a bishop, what do you think is feeding that in our congregations and in our denominations? I'm not trying to have you speak for the whole AME church. I'm just thinking Black church in general. When the church refuses to see that this is a part of the structures of what we're doing.
I think it's just like the Mary and Martha syndrome, right? We have been taught to celebrate workers, right?
Mm,
So the people in the kitchen, the
mm,
people who dress the altar, the people who prepare the communion. We've been taught that those are the people that we see as workers, but we have not been taught that they are also leaders. They're
mm,
workers. And we have been taught that the people we see who mount the pulpit, who proclaim the word, who hold titles, right? Deacon, steward, trustee, that they are the ones who have the power. And so if we just use the AME church, since I'm AME, rather than put women on the steward board, what do? We created a stewardess board because we don't
mm.
want you to have equal power. We want you to have something. So we're going to create another organization that you can have that can be all yours, and we're going to call it something else. And you will work for us, and you will work underneath us, and you will work on our behalf, but you won't have
And you
our
can't
power.
get married again. You
Right?
can't get married again.
Right? And so, we've
Yeah.
created these dynamics that allow people to be seen, but still not hold power.
Mm,
Because in order to hold power or to give power, it means you have to share power or relinquish power.
all
So if
right.
I don't want to share power or relinquish power, what I'll do is create something else that gives the imagery of power, but never gives you the authority that goes with the work or that goes with the office. And um, we have, I think it has become an opiate, for lack of a better word.
Mm,
I'm gonna make you the superintendent of the church school. And we walk around celebrating that we the superintendent of the church school and miss the fact that they didn't put us on the steward board. But we the superintendent of the church school. We missed it, right?
mhm.
We're so excited we're the head of the stewardess board. But we missed the fact that they didn't make us the church treasurer. And so they give us things to silence us. And if we don't pay attention, if women don't pay attention, we get so excited about the certificate that we missed the degree.
Wow.
And it's really um, helping people understand what makes authority legitimate in the church. Is it the office? Is it the title? Or is it who gives it to you? What makes Black women legitimate in the church? Because it's not money, because the money is ours. So it's not, we know it's not money. So it has to be a conferring of power. But who do we allow or who do we empower to confer power?
Mm.
Because
That's it.
they only have power because we give it to them. So if we take your power, then you can no longer confer power. But then who do we give the power to?
And what does the power do? Mm. And I wonder on a generational thing, because we have young women coming into the ministry with the levels of patriarchy and misogynoir. Some women just leave the church. And what does that do to the church?
Absolutely. And just, even if we look at women with earned doctorates that they call reverend and men with no degree that they call doctor.
Yep.
I mean, we see it. We see the manifestation of it. And often women, they will leave that church, but they still don't leave the church. They find another oppressive situation to go into, but because it's new, it doesn't feel as oppressive. Or because those people are not as familiar, it doesn't feel as oppressive. It's the same fight, regardless of what denomination you're in, regardless of what community you're in. It's the same fight. And so changing the faces doesn't change the fight.
Right.
We have to name it what it is, and we have to speak truth to power, and we have to be unafraid of the consequences. I was in a conversation the other day, and I said to somebody, I am clear. I was able to lead my class because I stood on the shoulders of 5 women who went before me. So I didn't
Mhm.
have to do the petition because somebody else had done it.
Right.
And unless we continue to build, it's not going to work. If we leave, then there's nothing to build on.
Mm. We leave, there's nothing to build on. And what will happen to the church if we leave? What is happening to the church as we leave? Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So Dr. Atkins-Jones, I this one it's funny, I was preparing for this and I don't know if you know about this book by her last name was Breckes. It's like the history of women in the church. I had to read that for my comprehensive exam. I hate that book. It was horrible. But it gave the history of women and it talked about the whole notion of the cult of true womanhood, this whole Victorian notion of what a woman is. We look at like Sojourner Truth and Jarena Lee and Maria Stewart, who have been navigating and resisting a Western Christian white woman framework that was never built for our full humanity. How has Christian collusion with colonialism and anti-Blackness worked theologically to keep Black womanhood out of the sacred? I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that question, but yeah.
I think it's a quote, so I feel like I have to answer.
I was like,
And
I was looking at your introduction and I was pulling some stuff. So I'm like, you probably wrote it. So, but what does it mean that that our faith has been colonized to the point that we don't even know? It's like, so for example, today I was at the Ethiopian at a cafe and I heard the woman behind the counter was Ethiopian and this lady came in pregnant. She said, you should be laying down like after you have the baby, you have in our culture, we have 3 months that you just lay down and everybody takes care of you and your feet are up and then they clean your house and all this other stuff. The notion of this of capitalism and colonization and anti-Blackness and we got this whole Black maternal death rate that's worse than in countries that have no, what does that do?
so it does a lot of things. I'm going to give some prefaces and then make sure I get back to the because I'm making my notes because it's past 7 o'clock. So
Amen.
so a sister needs bullet points. So first I will say I can't tell you how many emails I get to this day that address me as Ms. or address me by my first name, Amey Victoria. And to be talking about church stuff, coming to preach, can I get in the candler, all sorts of things. To this day, Ms. Atkins-Jones or Miss Jones. So there. The other thing I will say is that I grew up Baptist, Southern Missionary Baptist. It was incredibly difficult for me to get ordained. I did not come from a tradition where I didn't see women preach. I I came from rural folks, and a lot of folks, some folks have shifted over time, but at the time there were revivalists going around saying, almost verbatim, women need to be in the home. They need to be, barefoot and pregnant. And the reason why, because God said it. So for me, these things come from a number of places. One, we've been given a lot of terrible theology. And we have to acknowledge that. And that does not mean somehow somebody is practicing witchcraft. That doesn't mean, well, Jesus spoke the King James and that is it. This is the Holy Writ and this is all we have. Well, you can't, don't act like you can understand thee and thou every single time. Don't do that. And so we have interpreted a lot of capital T bold-faced tradition that certainly isn't biblical, but also are re-inscribing the very things that white Christians use to justify keeping Black Christians enslaved, right? Like, scripture has to be interpreted. It's not just Black and white. And there's a lot of distortion that I think we inherit. To that extent, this question of, when I say, Christian collusion and colonialism or in capitalism, we have to remember that we live in a legacy where Black and brown bodies, right? Bodies from the African continent, bodies that were indigenous to other lands, non-white bodies, that as whiteness emerged as this powerful idea, right? And mostly because people had money, guns, weapons, access to other kinds of things, that Christianity certainly merged with it. What we saw in many centuries of colonial power, right, is that you could be doing whatever you wanted in a colony and have whatever you wanted going back on at home at the same time. And so the cult of, virtuous womanhood, right, all of these ideas of, respectability, one, they come from a question of generations and lineage and inheritance, right? Like, we are having babies with everybody, but we need to make sure that white women and our wives are doing X, Y, and Z so that there's no question of what my bloodline is. And fast forward, right? We get to, the United States, we get to the Americas, and enslavement. We see the legacy of that. Enslavement allowed for the sexual abuse of so many Black women on plantations and otherwise. There were no laws for protection. There are not many laws for protection now. And even when there are laws, they are not upheld. And that is in service to someone. That's the maintenance of power. And so when we think about our history, and now there's a lot more, there's a lot of folks, online, like, we're deconstructionists and we're asking these kinds of questions. Well, one, there's a lineage of a lot of folks who've been asking these kinds of questions and who have been breaking these barriers for a very long time. So we have to not fall into the trap of like, ooh, I'm brand new, I'm the first person to do this, right? Like, I love how Bishop said, I stood on people's shoulders, I stood on folks' shoulders who maybe even thought differently than me, but who were making waves out of no waves. So I think we have to have a broader perspective of that. But we also have to say, well, wait, if we look historically, some of the things that we would say are respectability politics, right? So that wasn't just trying to assimilate into whiteness. Many of those things that we did or thought we did were inherited, but also were things that we did for protection, right? Like, the things that we said, well, maybe if we dress certain kinds of ways, right, then maybe we'll be respected. Maybe we'll be able to open a bank account. Maybe we'll be less likely to, be pulled off on the side of the road walking home. Maybe some of these things, right? Like, these were often techniques and aspects of survival. But that doesn't, when we have seen that those are not things that will keep you safe, and that the theology of the colonizer will not only not keep you safe, but it will not get you saved here or on the other side of glory, right? Like, that this is not salvation, then we have to ask some other kinds of questions of who was the Jesus who kept our ancestors alive and hopeful and insisting and still, nurturing us, taking risks, not just giving up and giving in and laying down. But what has happened to the Jesus who wants to set the captives free? Where is that in our theology and in our churches? What has happened that maintaining the status quo or repeating these different ideals, of it's more important to, it's more important for me to like just be Christian than to be Black, right? Like, it's like, well, wait, what? Who said that? What they mean? Who told you that? And we don't ask enough questions. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about it in the sense that Black folks, this country would not exist without Black labor. And our bodies that, anybody who had a womb, woman identified, femme, anything else, right? Like our very bodies didn't even belong to us. And we served a God and found traditions that were not all, kept traditions that saw through, the white Jesus of the master into our embodied practices. We clap and we stand and we rock and we shout and we move and we do all of these things, but also serve a God that said, wait, I came into the earth in the incarnation because flesh is sacred. Your body matters. You're holy. I have called you. And so I think that there's a lot of theology that's a problem, which means that there's a whole lot of preaching. That's the problem. Yep. There's a whole lot of Bible study that, is a problem. And that doesn't mean, that's not to shame folks, but it's to say, when you know better, you do better. But not knowing better as a means of maintaining power, that's where a lot of our question, to come back to your first question of sin is, right? Why do we maintain power? Because power feels good. Folks want to act like other things are just so sinful and dirty. Well, what feels really good is being in charge of everybody and being in control of everybody and getting everything you want and not having to be accountable to community or to one another. And we see that at every level of leadership, administration, and government. In this moment, if you haven't seen it before or noticed it before. So part of this question is, one of saying, I don't want you in the room, not just because I don't know you're called, not because I don't know you're gifted, but because I don't want to have to be accountable for the ways that is also going to cause me to have to change and grow and move and repent. And I think, and that's something as simple as like, you can't talk across the pulpit the same way you did if I'm sitting up there. Right. Like these are micro things, but we also have these larger levels. And we have to ask some questions around the ways that loving Black men has been malformed to protecting Black men, even in cases where they haven't been, where there's been abuse, where there's been injustice. And this isn't like harping on Black men, but we do have to think about why only Black men historically for so long have been seen as, the preacher, the charismatic leader of the church, and why Black women have continued to not only, as Bishop said, be seen as these, humble theological servants, right? Kind and sweet, but also why we've been so okay with the suffering of Black women as something that we can call holy, as opposed to saying, wait, the suffering is there so that we can point it out and do something about it.
Yeah. I had something and it left because it's after 7 o'clock.
It be like that sometimes.
It is, because I was thinking, I was like, even how we show up in the church, like the traditions that we have in the church, like in some Baptist churches, women can't go in the pulpit. Like my mother in the ministry, she went to her home Baptist church and had to preach from the floor. But they asked her husband to come up to the pulpit. But the things that we do that are symbolic, but it really represents our theology, and how we do these things. Now we're a quarter to the hour. We got to get to the part of how do we deconstruct this? How do we move from this? How do we try to break down some of these systems that have existed for God knows how long? And I just want to ask y'all both to just dream of what would the church look like if all of this was deconstructed and there was no misogynoir in the church. There was no issues with gender justice and hierarchy and all that. What would it look like? It's like use all your senses, right? Like Bishop, I want to hear what you have to say. What would that look like?
You know, I think it would scare the Hades out of us because it would not look like anything else we are familiar with. It wouldn't, right? It would be so foreign to us that I think we would still kill it. Because
Ooh.
anything we don't know, anything we don't understand, we break, we demonize, and we get rid of. It would be a beautiful tapestry woven together by the Spirit of God. But I think we have become so afraid of what we don't know that if we saw something different, we wouldn't know what to do with it. And the reality is, as we have said over and over again, is that the Black women have held up the church, right? The I have a dream speech was all about Mahalia shouting in the background, tell them about the dream, Martin. So the church is because there were Black women who were in the back saying, preach, pastor. The church is because there were Black women who were making the photocopies for the Bible study and who were putting the tablecloths and the linens on the table for the communion. So to see that we all became equals, like what would happen if the men were dressing the altar and putting out the bread and preparing the wine? Like what would that look like? It would be, we would call it a monster because it would not be familiar to us, but it would be so beautiful. It would be our Eden. It would be our perfect place. But I am convinced that we have been so indoctrinated, we have been so ill-informed, and we have become so ignorant of something different that we would still kill it because we don't like anything we don't know.
And that breaks my heart because we can't get free.
But some of us don't like being free. We like complaining about being bound.
Ooh. Yeah, complaining we should have stayed enslaved. But was Harriet? There's some of them. Yeah.
Right? Even in the wilderness, they said we should have stayed in Egypt. They're like, for real? Are we really gonna have this conversation?
But we have it because we don't know what to do. It still breaks my heart.
Because anytime we have a change in the system, there's always a group that still tries to fight it to go back, right? So how much energy do you expend trying to go forward when you have another group that is determined to take you back? And it's that tension that I think we're gonna live in until the Lord cracks the sky.
So
Because we are spiritual midgets. And I'm not sure the church will ever mature to the place where it can become its full self, because it will require the denial of our flesh and everything we have been manipulated to believe as right and good.
wow. So somehow we have to figure out how to have joy in the midst of that. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Dr. Jones, what you got? I saw you writing some stuff down.
Yeah, because I tell you, they come and they go. Um,
Mhm.
so one of the things that I teach womanist theology and Black feminist theology, in the movements and their commitments simultaneously. And one of the things that I love about the Combahee River Collective is that they said, if Black women were free, everybody would have to be free, because for Black women to be free, that would require the destruction of all of the systems of oppression.
Mhm.
And so when we are thinking or dreaming about um, what a free world would be or would look like, um, we have to expect that yes, there will be some who say that that's monstrous or demonic or whatever else. But you know what? They already did that. That's what they said when they came on African shores. Oh, these people are ugly. You still wanted to sleep and rape them, but oh, these people are ugly. Oh, they're monstrous. Oh, the Lord must have had some sort of ordo salutis, an order of salvation, and an order of the world where we got to be on top and they got to be on the bottom, right? We can use theology to justify anything. And they did the same thing with Jesus. I don't know what this is. And so and I don't want to be challenged in power, in spirit, or legality. And so, you're gonna have to die too. And we continue to see it with so many martyrs and also so many people who die senseless deaths. This is one of the reasons I like Mary, because Mary is the mother of a son who was executed by the state. If that doesn't relate to Black mamas in the United States and around the world, I don't know what else does. And I asked the question, what if Mary also just wanted to mother and not mother this movement in a particular kind of way? What does it mean to still have space to grieve? So to me, a space of freedom would look like a whole lot of healing. And it would smell you know, like somebody's cookout or somebody's church basement, right? Like it would be to me, a place where everybody could come to the table and be fed. Um, the older I get, the longer I live, the more I understand why Jesus was always out here asking, well, do you want to be made well? Because I have for a lot of folks, the answer is no. And that is because walking in healing and wholeness feels a lot scarier than staying tied to whatever woundedness we still have. And I'm grateful to God that, the spirit is still present to us in those moments. I don't like to use popular culture because something always comes and messes it up. Like when you use popular culture as an example, right? Like somebody doing all right, and then there's something else. But I think that a beautiful pointing to this kind of heaven on earth, right? That transcends time and space and culture and people, but also maintains the beauty and particularity of us all. I gotta say, I love the music and dancing, the choreography of the scene in Sinners, where they are singing and everything is being brought together, and it's cacophonous, right? Like it's a joyful noise. And also all of these things are working together and moving in this beautiful synchronicity, even with evil right at the door. And I think that there is something to be said that we do come from a legacy of hush harbors, right? Like the black church has never been, if we look back to the civil rights movement, most black churches were not in favor of Dr. King. The black church has not just been some inherently progressive space, but it has been a place of respite, and it has been a place of joy. It has been a place, where folks have been able to be affirmed in dignity and who they are. And so if it can be that, I don't think it needs to be just one static thing. But I think that there is still hope for us in places and spaces, and especially as trailblazing, groundbreaking folks like Bishop Crawford and so many others are taking it by storm. I think that there's still a lot of hope for us. But to me, it is I think the best way for me to describe it is that if we were all free, there would be a lot of dancing, there would be a lot of singing, there would be so much joy, and people would know what it means to be well.
Yeah. 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 in spite of ourselves. Yeah.
Because it really is us sometimes.
Yeah.
It really be us
Y'all
sometimes too.
said it. Both of y'all, you're like, I don't know if we know how to handle it. It
Yeah.
would be so beautiful that we'd be like, what is this? Is this real?
Yeah.
Is it
And
gonna
I
go
think
away?
we struggle with beauty, right? Because
Mm.
beauty, whenever something is beautiful, we find something wrong with it.
Yeah. You have to be intentional and stop and take it in and really, because like how many times do we walk past beauty and don't even see it? But when we slow down, and that's something that for me has come out of the pandemic. It's like it caused us to slow down for a little bit. And you saw some stuff that you didn't see before because we were so busy, but we went right back to the busy, right back to the I don't know what to do with this. Not that the pandemic was utopia, because it was opposite of that. But um, yeah, this is
Mhm. And I think we also wrestle with the question about liberation, right? Liberated from what? Liberated to what?
mm,
Because it's
mm-hmm.
one thing to be liberated from, but what are you trying to be liberated to? And I'm not sure that we've named that.
Because
Yeah.
it can't just be switching places in an oppressive system, right? I mean, this is the problem with capitalism, right? Like everybody's fighting over this one little bit, or even the example of, okay, I'm so glad that I just got this little piece that I haven't noticed that all of this is happening over here that I'm not even able to have access to. But we also have to say, well, wait, there's some stuff that people got that we don't want. Um, it may make life easier, but like, is that really what we're trying to do? Is that the best God has for us? Is that the best God has for anyone in the world? We just happen to be here in this time where I didn't choose where I was born or what country or what nationality or any of that kind of stuff, what color, anything else. So are we trying to get a seat at the same tables, or are we trying to turn over the tables that keep everybody bound?
That part.
And, I think that there is definitely something to be said for, you know, our sense of not being able to see beauty and wholeness and God. Not only are we bad at seeing it in others, but we're not great at seeing it in ourselves. There are too many folks who are waking up in the mirror and being met with hatred and negation. And then you carry that out into the world too. So there's a lot, I think, to be discussed if the church wants to be, if Jesus is supposed to be a doctor in the sick room, right? If the church is supposed to be the spiritual hospital, all of these things, we got to ask some questions about, the validity of the medicines we're giving.
And the
Um,
diagnoses are we might be in a totally different realm of what sickness is and trying to fix something and it's all the way over here, you know, because we're trying to perpetuate what we see others doing, and that just not might not be for us. Like as women, do we do ministry like the men do? Do we want the same structures of way of showing up? Like I'm thinking of, like in the church as a pastor, like I decided not, I went into ordained ministry, but I didn't feel called to pastoring. And in some spaces are like, well, what else is there? But there's so many ways that you can show up in ministry. You can show up in academia, you can do advocacy. There's so many things. And I think we gotta free our minds. And the rest will follow. I don't know. Um,
I think I think one of the saddest things about any of these systems of oppression, any of them, any of the isms, name all of them. I think one of the saddest things for us in the church, right? We're supposed to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world. We see a world that is constantly on fire and so much need and so much hurt and so much violence. And to intercede even in the midst of that. But when we cut ourselves off from our own hands and our own feet, right? Like when we cut ourselves off from each other, we can't hear a word from each other, or you not this, so you can't be that, or you not this, so you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really steals our creativity and it blunts our imagination. So much so that, you know, even what Bishop Crawford was saying, you know, we wouldn't know what to do with it because we have a failure of imagination. Like we can't even like co-create with God because we have put God in such a tight box.
Mm-hmm.
So even when God is trying to do other things, we miss it. Now, that doesn't mean everybody misses it. And it doesn't mean that there aren't folks who are resisting and refusing and working in spite of it. But it is heartbreaking because imagine what we could do if we truly were willing to love one another and to work for the justice and peace and freedom of us all together. Like if we were actually wanting to be the church. There's so much about this world that could change. And there's so much suffering that we could help end and intervene into. But we have a failure of imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if we could see the fullness of God in everyone. I mean, just the fullness of God.
Yeah.
We struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because some of us believe the fullness of God only shows up in us. And it doesn't show up in anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something we need to tackle. And wow. Thank y'all in the chat because they was having some good conversation in the chat too, and a lot of amens and there was a quote from Sojourner's Voice and Verse is an email newsletter that comes out every day. Margaret Atwood says oppression involves a failure of the imagination, the failure to imagine the full humanity of other human beings. That was just recently, so it's just basically affirming what both of you say, and that I keep hearing someday we'll all be free. I keep hearing that play in my head. Take it from me. Someday we'll all be free. It's just we gotta want to be free. But the fact that we had this conversation gives me hope because we're naming it, we're identifying the structures, and we realize we have been finding joy in the midst of it. We've been able to do ministries in ways that have blessed people. Both of you in your work and the way that you show up, the fact that you're here in the fullness and authentic women of God, it gives me hope that I'm not the only one thinking these things and that there's others that are having conversations and want to be whole. Thank y'all so much for this deep conversation after 7 o'clock. It's real.
Thank you.
Central time, 6 o'clock. So I'm gonna say you're in Mississippi's right now, right? And
Yep.
So yep. My daddy went to Jackson State, so I know all.
Oh, don't get them started.
Yes,
VI love.
love.
Don't get them started.
Man, he said, I'll get on the bus to JSU. That's what he told me. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We have so many more webinars this month. If you go to the SojoAction event website, oh gosh, Courtney, please help me. We have like 2 next week. I can't even remember the names of them, but there's one talking about authoritarianism and looking at with Asian American and Island Pacific Month. There's a conversation about building power in that community. So please go to the link that's in the chat. You will have a follow-up email that'll be coming from Courtney, so that there'll be links to all of the things and to this recording that you can share with your friends, and to Bishop Crawford and to Dr. Adkins-Jones. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for all that you've done to break down barriers and to expose the sins that are out here trying to destroy and not letting it destroy. I think of, oh gosh, Lucille Clifton, won't you celebrate with me that everything that tried to kill me today
That's fair.
has failed. So everyone go in peace. Uh-oh, somebody, Southern University.
You got these people
I
started.
opened up the swag, didn't I? I opened up the swag. I'm sorry. Y'all go in peace, and we'll see
Thank you for the
you.
invitation.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. I can't wait to meet you in person, both of y'all.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.